these. All right, let's start with our count. Welcome to a wonderful, wonderful Create and Grow Your Brain Capital podcast. I am your keynote speaker, Janine Letford, here with you, talking all things creativity, brain health, brain skills, which is brain capital, and of course, intercultural creativity, neurosomatic creativity, and all that good stuff. I love going live. I love being here surrounded by wonderful, wise, just innovative and creative thinkers. And today is no different. Today I have with me Dr. Natali Edmonds. And let's check out who she is and read her bio so you know that I only bring to you the best. Dr. Natali Edmonds is a board-certified geropsychologist and the host of the #1 Dementia Caregiving channel on YouTube with over 25 million views. She's helped thousands of families around the world feel more confident and less alone as they care for someone living with dementia. Before starting Dementia Careblazers, Dr. Natali worked for years in hospitals and clinics supporting people with dementia and their families. She's known for her down-to-earth teaching style, her big heart, and her ability to make even the toughest caregiving moments feel a little lighter. So honored to have you here with us. We'll talk about why we even got connected in the first place. This amazing event happening in Buckeye, Arizona in November, and really just what you're about and how to get what you know into the homes of people. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Janine. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. Well, let's, give people a little bit background. Folks really, they see you doing amazing things and it's like, you didn't just were born like you were here. There's a story to get here. So what about your story got you really interested in the geriatrics field and now doing work with dementia?
Yeah, so I worked in a large hospital setting, and one of my very first positions was working in a geriatric assessment center. So our goal was basically to assess the person coming in to figure out what were the brain changes the family or they were witnessing. What was that due to? Is it possible dementia? Is it age-related changes? Is it depression? Is it normal? Like, what is it? And so I worked on an amazing team with amazing professionals. And at the end of all of our assessments, we'd come together, put together our results, and invite the person we were evaluating and anybody they wanted involved, and we'd give them all the feedback. For many of them, they were hearing for the very first time they had some type of dementia, like maybe Alzheimer's disease, big news. And then what we would do is we would say, we'll see you in a year. And my heart just broke because I knew what the family members were going to be facing for, the coming months and the changes that happen. And I wanted to be able to do more to help them, help bridge the gap between appointments. And working in the healthcare field, I was, bound to the hospital system. So I would try to run a support group. I tried to do individual counseling with the family members. And it was just so hard for family members to make it to the appointments on time, to be able to find care for their loved one with dementia so that they were able to attend. And it just seemed like the system made it really hard to give these family members the care that they were wanting and needing. And so eventually one day, with, sparing a lot of other details, I just had this idea of what if I could provide a lot of the basic information and strategies and tips in a way that they could access it 24/7 without having to show up. Not a replacement for healthcare, but kind of filling in some of the gap while they're waiting for their healthcare appointment. So basically on the evenings and weekends while I was still working at the hospital, I would just turn on my camera and I would answer the common questions I received every single day in practice. What's the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? What do I do when my loved one doesn't want to bathe or accept help from me? How do I handle these symptoms? What are these symptoms? So I just started talking to the camera about these things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Dementia Careblazers was born. So I just saw the need in the system.
Yes, and my research and work is in creative thinking and just really pulling out the gems of people's journey and how creativity pops up, right? And one thing about creativity and especially curiosity is your ability to see patterns, right? Like everyone's asking about this. Maybe this is a concern I should address, and then having that in you to actually respond, because a lot of people have dealt with it, but to respond in it the way that you did. Thank you so much for serving in that way. And
It's my
so that,
pleasure. And I just want to say, I think curiosity and creativity are two of the top skills any dementia caregiver can have as well.
yes, and actually let's expand
Yeah.
on that. Why is that so, and what does that look like in the day to day?
So a lot of people with dementia have similar symptoms. Like, for example, maybe they are having a hard time bathing or not wanting to keep up with hygiene. That's something a lot of family members are facing. However, there's not just one thing we can do to respond that's going to help everybody. Everybody responds differently. So I
Mhm.
think a lot of people are wishing there was a handbook or a manual. If somebody with dementia does X, we do Y. But it doesn't work that way. And a lot of family members quickly find themselves frustrated, burned out, or feeling like there is no hope or nothing can work, when I believe there's always something we can do to help the situation, but it's
Mhm.
probably not going to be the exact same thing the other person in the support group did and worked. So we have to tap into our own creativity. We have to be open to new ideas, and we have to be very curious and observing our loved ones about how are they responding to this approach? Was it a little bit better than the last approach? Maybe I can lean into this more, or whoa, that didn't work at all. Now let's shift approaches. I think when we want to have all the answers up front, we're
Mhm.
more likely to quit quicker and get frustrated quicker than if we realize, hey, part of this journey is going to be being creative and trying new things. And there's no way to know what's really going to work until you try it. And then now you have more information to now do a new iteration and try again. So there are often no easy, clear, simple answers that apply to everybody in the same way. It's really like being creative and seeing what works for your loved one.
And that's interesting because we're in a situation where we're evolving. I worked with children, so it's a slightly different situation. But in my experience, it's like, right, especially with my son, like right when I got something down, he's evolving.
Yes.
He's moving to the
Yes.
next stage. I'm like, what? I got to figure this stage out. But this is a different situation. But there's an evolution going on with the structure of the brain throughout time. What do you say to that, as far as them having to readapt and with
Yes.
their creativity? What cues should they be looking for?
No, that's exactly right. So with dementia, it changes, it progresses with time. So what works today might not work tomorrow. So we're constantly having to adjust. And a lot of times people will ask me, well, how do I know if I'm using the right approach? Or is I did this thing, is it okay that I did it? And I always say, like, your loved one is telling you, like, pay attention to their cues. How are they responding? Did it seem to calm them, or did it seem to distress them? So we take our cues on what is the best approach based on how
Mhm.
they were responding. Now, we have to be careful with that, because there are some situations, especially in dementia, where they're not going to be happy with how we're managing and how we're saying. For instance, in safety concerns, like if your loved one with dementia wants to drive a car and they're about to get behind the wheel and they're no longer safe to drive a car, we're going to do whatever we can to intervene in that very scary, safety situation. So our goal isn't to try to make them happy every time, but if we are trying to figure out how do we manage this particular situation and what's helping and what's hurting, we do want to look to their behaviors to help guide us. And because the disease is changing, that means our approaches are often changing as well.
Oh, okay. Go for it. How do we manage? That's what I got last.
Oh, it must have froze.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It
So
was your last point.
Okay, so because dementia is always changing, it means our approaches always have to be changing as well. Just because something is working today, it doesn't mean it won't work that it's going to work tomorrow. And just because something isn't working today doesn't mean it won't work tomorrow. We have to stay flexible.
Yes, and that's always a good reminder. That's a good reminder in every sphere of life, but bringing it to this community as well. And so with that, let me talk a little bit about the event coming up. Just Buckeye Dementia, and I don't know if you're familiar with the program. The friendly cities of dementia. So dementia friendly cities, they're popping up many places, and Avondale is they're starting their program. So just cities and airports and other social spaces that are really just aware on how do we support the people living with dementia and their caregivers going throughout the space, interacting with the different participants in the area. And so they have sometimes name tags and things along those lines. So the city of Buckeye is a dementia friendly city. They have a wonderful, really efficient team. And so we are throwing an event on November 8th for those of you who are in the Phoenix greater area. And let me see if I could get the file up. But we are really just looking to give information about just the caregiving, bringing you in, and just having people just really understand, number one, that they're not alone, correct? Anything to talk to about that while I bring up the flyer? How does really building community affect, the level of burnout, affect just the mental health of this social group?
It's huge. And when you think about dementia and the person who has it needing more care as time goes on, it means it's more likely that the family member their circle is shrinking. Their ability to get out, engage with the community, do their hobbies, see their friends, it's very easy to shrink and shrink as the person with dementia needs more and more. It's hard for some of them to even be able to leave their home and go, grocery shopping or run an errand, go to the post office, because at some point in the disease process, the person with dementia will require basically 24/7 care for their own safety. So we have to look for ways to maintain social support, maintain connection with others, despite our loved ones needing us more and more. So, luckily now we live in a time where we can connect with amazing technology through phones, through social apps, through the internet. Many support groups offer things online, but it's helpful to be able to get out too and just see the real world. One Careblazer comes to mind right now. She had been caregiving for her spouse for years and years, and basically lost a lot of her social contacts, stopped doing hobbies, eventually got some in-home respite so that she can have some time outside. And she went to a coffee shop to meet with somebody. And her comment, she said, I was blown away at how much living was going on. Like to her, like she had lost sight of just there's lines to get coffee and there's people sitting and having a drink. It was like she just lost all that connection, and she was just blown away at like, wow, people are living. There's a life happening out here, and I've totally lost touch with it. And yeah, the lack of community, lack of social support, lack of meaningful connections, it's going to increase caregiver burnout, depression, anxiety. It's going to make caregiving harder. And not to mention that relationship you have with your loved one with dementia is going to impact their ability to have a conversation at some point. So you're missing that intellectual connection too with somebody, even if you have it right now with them in the earlier stages. So it's important to have a community.
Yeah, that's so good, and that's why we love the the Buckeye Memory Cafe. And I know there's several cities around the nation that have the Memory Cafe, but every second Tuesday of each month, they're at the where are they? 201 East Center Avenue and Buckeye at the Buckeye Senior Center in Buckeye. So from 9 to 11, the caregivers just get together and they talk, they share strategies, and those living with dementia are in another room doing an activity of some sort, a music activity, a connection activity. So just really to act as that support. So that's every second Tuesday of the month in Buckeye, Arizona at the Senior Center. But here is the flyer for the event that we're so excited to have you at, the Dementia Care and Resource Forum. on November 8th from 10 to 2 it's called The Landing at 945 North 215 215th Avenue in Buckeye, Arizona. So they're just so excited to have you as the keynote speaker. There'll be vendors there, people with information, but also a panel, some speakers. I'll be there just running around, just supporting wherever I can. And just really just want people to know that, number one, they're not alone. Number two, there's resources in their own community, and people from Avondale, the West Valley, the East Valley, Phoenix, whoever can attend. And really just, this is hopefully the first of many, just really starting the community, because the numbers are pretty drastic. Do you know that the stats just with those living with Alzheimer's? 'Cause I know there's a big event with Alzheimer's Association. There's like a running a marathon happening in Phoenix area. But the last I heard, it's like 7 million in the United States of America are living with Alzheimer's, and what that looks like to the years of 2050, they're looking at might triple. And these resources are going to be huge. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, so the Alzheimer's Association, I'm trying to pull it up right now. Every year they come out with something called the Facts and Figures Report. It's free for anybody, and they're often giving the most up-to-date numbers, and many of those reports break it down in your area. And so it's always a really great thing to download. Like, I can access it right now, but I'm actually looking for the little infographic, which has the big takeaways. But yeah, and most of the research and most of the money and most of the people with dementia have Alzheimer's disease. So that's what is often reported. But those, scary numbers, like, okay, there's estimated 7 million people with Alzheimer's disease in the United States. That's not even counting all the other types of dementia.
Yeah.
So when you think about all the other types of dementia, it's really like, oh my gosh, it's staggering. And to think that the majority of people with dementia don't actually even have an official diagnosis of some type of dementia. So how many people are we missing there as well? It's scary because of the toll it takes on everybody involved. It does not just impact the person who has the condition. And also, there's a lot we can do to prevent it. So there is starting to be a trend now to talk more and more about the health behaviors we can do to prevent it, which is hopeful. But right now it's really an emergent situation.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about prevention. That's my field is in. I focused on creativity and the brain, and the term called brain capital, which is the intersection of brain health and brain skills. And with your work, you're really looking at brain skills. Brain health, but you're also looking at brain skills. Like you just said, it's important to be creative, observant, recognize patterns. Your interpersonal skills and intrapersonal skills are important. Those are all brain skills, right? But the brain health is what does it look like? My son and I and our family, we have the 7 colors of the rainbow, meaning the 7 pillars of building, a strong brain. And it's like food, sleep, movement. Movement is huge. I would love for you to give a few tips on that. Social interaction, stress reduction, and stress elimination. There's one more. I was like, I should know these by heart. And there's one more. And then there's arts. We believe that the arts should have a significant part in the conversation throughout the lifespan. So the beginning of the lifespan at birth, but also those living with dementia and their caregivers. So there's 2 questions in there. The importance of movement and how people can work that in. And then what's your stance on the arts as part of a strategy?
Oh, I love it. I think both are extremely important. I love the arts theme, right? Because you have to think art is really creative. There's no really rules of things you have to follow. And it's going to be working your brain. It's something different. Anything we're doing to give our brain some positive input, getting it to think in different ways, and also to do something enjoyable is always going to have a health benefit, not only for our brain protection, but also just for our emotional, mental health well-being to do something like that. That's such a creative outlet. And then exercise is extremely important. It's one of those things that we think about it in terms of, maybe cardiovascular health or, building strong muscles. but it's also important for our brain. Like our brain is a muscle. We want to be able to continue to work it, make sure the blood is flowing. It's all connected. So it's very clear. I think one of the hardest parts is, we hear so often, diet and exercise are important. Diet and exercise are important. It's absolutely true. But I think we can be creative even in how we think about exercise. Like a lot of people are like, I don't want to go for a run. I don't want to go for a jog. I don't want to. It's like we can do anything. Yesterday, we were in support groups inside of my program. We had people talking about curling. Like some of them were from Canada, and I guess curling is a really big thing up there. Like with the broom you see on the Olympics. One of our members had to leave group early to go attend curling. Another one of our members was going that afternoon dragon boating, where you're on this like dragon boat and so there's also ways to adapt physical exercise regardless of your condition. So I think we have to be creative and think outside of the lines, and it doesn't require a gym membership. It doesn't require running or jogging or doing anything you don't like. And so sometimes I encourage people to just test something out. Be open to some sort of thing that maybe you've never tried before. You might enjoy it. Last year, my girlfriend and we ended up buying rollerblades. So I haven't rollerbladed since I was a teenager. It was a little scary now that I'm in my 40s, but it was fun and it was something different. So I knew I was helping my brain in that moment, but I was also helping just my mental well-being. So I would say in terms of the creativity theme for this, conversation, be creative in what you even consider exercise.
Yes. And there's a lot of research coming out. We were at Millennium Dance Complex, and there's a lot of research coming out on the importance of dance. And so you get your heart rate up, and you look like you have something to add on about that. But really quick, so we have the Lyrics and Leadership Institute for Brain Health, and my co-director is Keely, and she danced with, Janet Jackson and all these people. But now she's like, how do we really direct this to people, especially in their midlife? Because I want you to talk about the midlife. But what do you want to say about the importance of dance for our caregivers too? Right? This is for you too, but also
absolutely. So I personally love dance. My favorite thing I look forward to every single week is Tuesday evening. I go to a dance jam class. But the thing that I noticed that it also helps, besides just the physical and fun, you're actually learning steps. You're actually putting together sequences, right? So we're actually really working our brain in more ways than one, specifically when it comes to maybe a choreographed dance, which I think is just fantastic. And also just the community that comes along with it. So I love that.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, I believe it's not even a trifecta. It's like a quadruple or septetta. I don't even know how to say it. Because the cognition in improvisational dance, but also choreographed dance, and your proprioception, your ability to understand where your limbs are in space, your emotional connection. And once again, this is a lifespan conversation, right? This is important at the beginning of the lifespan, in the middle, and really to keep the brain as vibrant as possible at the end. So we believe dance is a way to go. And
a huge way to go. And you don't have to join a class to do it if you don't have access to it. You could do it at home, pull up a free YouTube dance playlist or something and go along with that.
Yeah. I do it in the morning. That's how I before I work, I have to get my blood moving because I want people to understand the brain, which I actually do have one right here.
I love
it. The brain is a vascular organ, right? Dr. Raul Jandile, he talks about it being a garden. Like you have to water the garden, and so movement waters the garden, and the good nutrients you're eating. But here's the 7 pillars that we talk about, and brain: creativity, movement, relationships. And one thing that you brought up is, as far as the caregiver, of how you said her world was kind of shrinking. Because that to me is, I never thought about it that way, but they say isolation is not good for the brain. It's almost as bad as smoking. And we had a huge, the Surgeon General said isolation is an epidemic. Anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, and so the Lancet, they come out with they've identified 14 things to help prevent dementia. And they estimate over 40% of all cases of dementia can be prevented by focusing on these modifiable risk factors. And so one of the risk factors, for instance, is hearing, right? Like being able to hear adequately. So if you need hearing aids, please do wear them. But when we think about one of the, like, why is that? Why would that be? Well, when we're not really hearing our environment, we're not taking in input. Our brain is not really processing information or having anything to work toward. And when we think about isolation, in some ways it's pretty similar. We're reducing our input. We need our brain to stay active in many, many ways. And one of the ways is going to be through what we hear, through what we see, through conversation. And when our senses start to go, like our hearing or our vision, we're reducing our input. When our relationships start to go, the people around us who we're talking to, we're reducing our input. So our brain is like working out less. Yeah, working out involves moving your body, but it also involves anything that's requiring the brain. So isolation actually can increase your risk for dementia, not to mention depression.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is so good. And I actually heard a podcast with Dr. Huberman and Dr. Andrew Huberman, and he had an auditory like neuroscientist on. It's amazing. And I recorded the conversation because I wanted to hear it over and over again. And she was talking about how your auditory system is so powerful, and you want to build it. You want to build it once again from day one. Actually, the fetus can hear by the second trimester. And so part of our reasoning is what, like you said, we shouldn't wait till signs start showing. How can caregivers watch over their own brain while they're watching over the brains of those living with, or watching over the people with the brains of those living with dementia?
Yeah, I mean, it's never too early, first of all, to think about brain health, right? Mm-hmm. We want to be doing things that are healthy for our brain immediately, as soon as possible. But for many people, our brain health doesn't really take front and center stage until we see people in our own lives start to be affected with certain conditions, and we see how much it impacts their lives. And that's where I get a lot of people coming to talk to me and say, oh my gosh, I'm afraid I'm going to get dementia now. My mother had dementia, my grandmother had dementia, now my husband, like, I feel like it's all around me. And so that's when they really start to take it seriously. So it's never too early to be thinking about brain health, but it's also like, for anybody listening to this, it's not too late. There are health behaviors we can do now that can make a positive impact and improve your overall quality of life. And it doesn't require, I like to say, it doesn't have to take a bunch of time, and it doesn't have to take away your care for your loved one. You can work in health behaviors in whatever your daily life is now. Maybe it's listening to a new podcast, reading a book, doing a crossword puzzle, going for a walk, having a meaningful social connection. We have to like branch out and think about what it looks like to be brain healthy. And it's not just the crossword puzzle, right? There's all kinds of things that can take our, like I just recently got into Wordle. I don't know if you know what this is. My friends introduced me to this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's working my brain, right? I cannot get this word. What is wrong with me? So just, again, be open, flexible, and creative in what you even approach and try to do. But if it's helping you stay connected to something, if it's helping you use your brain in some way, and I might encourage you to like mix it up a little bit. So instead of just like, if you're typically like just the crossword puzzle person, or you're typically just the, social connection person, see what it's like to try something new so that your brain can have a new experience, a new input, and you can, help yourself in that way too. You might just find something new that you like. But yes, caregiving is extremely hard. And in the later stages, it could take up a lot of time. But we are still very much have the ability to prioritize our own brain health, even if it's just choosing a healthier meal that night, and making sure we don't isolate ourselves too completely. Pick up that phone and call that girlfriend.
Yes. And I don't know if I have my book over here, but Dr. Ann Fenn is the author of The Brain Health Kitchen. Dealing with our Alzheimer's through food. And so I just wanted to share that because I got the book. I love it. My son and I are working on a kids cookbook, like a brain health cookbook for, we should interview you too. Just because we're just trying to, once again, get the conversation, support those who are living with it now. And that's their life now. But also, a lot of these people, they call it the sandwich generation, right?
Yeah.
Any tips for people in that position?
Yeah, I mean, those that
define that first. Define it.
So sandwich generation typically refers to somebody who is sandwiched between generations. Often the people that I'm working with, they're caring for somebody, perhaps a parent, but they're also raising children. So here they are trying to do, care for the older generation and the younger generation, which can be extremely hard and stressful and taxing in many ways. But what I wanted to say too, with what you're talking about, with like what you're doing, creating a cookbook with your son, like that is brain health. That is forming new connections. That is something great. And brain health doesn't have to be boring. It can be incredibly fun. So that's something like if you talk to somebody, they probably wouldn't say, if you're like, how do I, do things to help my brain? They might not say, oh, do a cookbook with your children. That might not come up because that's something so creative. It's not like we have this book to open up and say, these are all the healthy behaviors, but that is such a healthy behavior because of the connections you're making, the new recipes, trying things, the cooking, the following the steps, interviewing people, so much richness there. I just love that example as like, yeah, healthy behavior doesn't necessarily mean boring behavior.
Awesome. You heard it here first, folks, by a doctor. So get your cookbook, but thank you for pointing that out, because we have Brain Alicious Adventures, which is just like, how do we, so what we're doing, just so you know, and once again, our event is November 8th in Buckeye, Arizona. Anyone is welcome. We'll just, we should have the link to sign up, even though I don't know, but go to my socials to sign up, and I'll put the link there, or just email us and I will put the email at the end. But so we're saying, how do we get ahead of the dementia growth, the crisis, basically, that's what it is, by teaching the kids to be brain healthy, and they are teaching their parents, or the parents are learning during the process, and then communicating it out. And so that's one way we're trying to, be a part of the solution, in addition to supporting organizations like Dementia Friendly Buckeye and other areas. But I love the point that you pointed out of there's so many other factors going on just by this one activity. Is there any other areas of the pillars that people should be aware of as far as building strong brains for themselves, but also supporting those who are living with dementia?
I mean, I'd say the one that I focus on a lot just inside of our program and working with the family members who are caring, really just the power of relationships. It feels like, so a lot of times people feel like they're embarrassed to admit some of the things they're going through, or there's some shame involved still. And the more you connect with people and open up and share, the more you realize you are not alone at all. In fact, I did find that Alzheimer's disease infographic, and it says nearly 12 million Americans provide unpaid care for people with Alzheimer's disease or dementia. 12 million. So you're certainly not alone. And I like to tell people, like, whatever it is you think that's really weird or awkward about your situation, I guarantee you the other people can relate to that, have had similar experiences to that. And there is some comfort and therapy that comes from just being able to share. Now, unfortunately, a lot about life, but also in caregiving, there are no fixes. There are certain things we're just not going to fix. It's going to be heartbreaking and it's going to hurt. There's no way to get rid of that. But there is some healing that can come just from sharing and talking and have somebody to listen to. So I think that that's incredibly important to have. Like, it, without fail, whenever I do something live, there will be people who come up and say, oh my gosh, I had no idea there are other people in this situation. Or for some reason, it feels good that there are other people in this situation. Or sometimes people will pull me aside and in a very quiet way say, I didn't want to say anything in front of everybody, but this is my situation and I'm a little bit embarrassed. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, let everybody raise your hand if you've ever had this situation. And it's like the whole hands go up and they're like, oh my gosh. So there's a little bit of like, a lot of shame goes away by just opening it up. And when we're in situations where there is not a fix, or, we know the end result that's going to happen, having people to support you and be there with you is going to be incredibly helpful for your whole well-being.
Yeah, that's so good because we're social beings. So the
Yes.
brain needs to know that that there's, in neuroscience we call it neural synchrony when you're moving together.
Yeah.
And actually, I love Dr. Andrew Huberman because he really brings a lot of the people who are in the academia world into like the everyday world. And
Yes.
he was interviewing a doctor, I forgot his name, looking at faith in the brain,
Uh-huh.
but the doctor was talking about grieving practices. And when you're thinking
Mhm.
about it, this is what it, my grandmother did have Alzheimer's, not really late. I think she passed away before I got too late. She was 89, fierce woman. He talked about the Jewish practice of sitting Shiva. So
Mhm.
the Jewish community, they have a like a practice
Uh-huh.
of how to grieve. And I
Mhm.
was thinking with my friends, like, we don't, Americans or whatever type of social group, like we don't really teach people how to grieve. Like you might get 3 days off of work, but that's really about it. Like there's no practice, at least in my community. In New Orleans, sometimes they had like the line down, like the band line. They would play
Yeah.
the band line, and then they would come back and play joyful music because they believe it's a homegoing things like. So there's those minor things. Well, I won't call that minor, but those cultural aspects. But like the Jewish community, like there's a whole thing. But one thing that he did say, and then I would love to get your point on this, is one thing that helps the grieving process is people who are more, I don't want to say successful with grieving, but have healthier outcomes, is they're able to compartmentalize the happy moments. So
Mhm.
it's those memorables of what they were like before it got too deep into the sickness, and holding on to that. But what do you say about the process? You're almost grieving in real time, but the person is physically there,
Yeah.
but you're grieving the identity loss. Any
Yeah.
insight?
Yeah, the grief that comes along in dementia caregiving can be a lot different than the grief a typical person would think about. A lot of times we think we grieve when somebody has passed away, but in
Mhm,
dementia care, there's so many losses that happen along the way. It feels
mhm,
like a grieving process for years and years. And in fact, I think it was the Alzheimer's Association who published this. 72% of family dementia caregivers report experiencing relief after their loved one passes away, because
interesting.
there's been so much grief and so much hardship along the way that sometimes it feels like finally there's a little bit of breathing room. Not that it's not hard, but it's just a very different process for dementia caregiving. But I think the most powerful, important lesson for any human being to learn, and I would agree with you, our society, the American society, does not do a very good job at this, is that uh, being able to feel hard emotions.
Mm,
I think we have this expectation or this unspoken feeling that we are supposed to feel good all the time. And
mhm.
when we don't feel good all the time, we take that as a sign something is wrong and we need to fix it and get out of it really quickly. And so this is where we get people to bottle up emotions or just turn to online shopping or Netflix binging or turning to extra glasses of wine or extra tub of ice cream. We start doing all these behaviors to give us a good feeling when we're feeling bad. But what I like to remind people, in a big part of what I teach a lot of the Careblazers who work with me, is that life is filled with heartbreaking real world situations that we probably don't want to feel good about. We probably don't want to feel good that there are people in the world who are developing a condition we have no cure for and will die from. We don't want to feel good that there are people starving right now, that there is war happening. We don't
Mm.
want to feel good. Like, I would never try to convince somebody to feel good about any of those things. And there are a lot of things in life that don't feel good. So to me, it makes sense that we would spend some time learning how to feel bad, right? And not thinking we have to try to force ourselves to feel good right away. I think a lot of super extra suffering and pain comes because we think we're not supposed to feel hurt, like we're not supposed to have hurt sometimes. And I think we are supposed to have hurt sometimes. And part of my goal as a psychologist is to help people, like, you can feel this, you can process this, you can move through it, and it doesn't mean anything is wrong with you.
Ah, that is so good. because a part of our research is how do we improve leadership skills and brain health skills, capital skills through the arts. And we personally believe that the arts are a human right, right? And the arts are one of the methods that we can use as a tool to process emotion.
Yeah.
Right. We study the work of Prince and Billy Joel and Dolly Parton, and a lot of them, like your singer-songwriter artists. I think Prince has said this. He was like, some of those hard emotions, because Prince, lost his son right after birth. Some of those hard emotions I can't feel them until I write them out, until I sing them out. Like music was his main method of getting through life, and of course he's an extreme example because he made a whole career out of it, but it doesn't matter who you are, music, painting, dancing, going back to moving that out. What are your thoughts with people really thinking twice about, can I bring the arts into my life once again, for my own mental and emotional health, but also in the community as well?
No, I love it. I think it's absolutely something people should be considering and at least trying. There's nothing to lose from that. Like what do you have to lose from maybe trying to write a poem or write a song or journal or do a dance or, any sort of expression, right? When we think about art, it's an expression and it can express what we're feeling inside. And sometimes it might not be all rainbows and roses because that's not life. Sometimes it might be pain. It might be sorrow. It might be grief, and all of that's okay. But to allow it, I always say, when we stop trying to resist it and we allow ourselves to feel it, it kind of passes through easier. And also, one of the big things we learn is that we can get through it. This thing that we are resisting, this pain, this hurt, we're going to feel it for the rest of our lives. So we might as well get good at feeling it. Which doesn't mean we're going to stay there forever, but it means like, oh, I know this heaviness in my chest. That's how the sadness feels for me. Or I know this jitteriness inside my body. That's how anxiety feels for me. So maybe dance is the great thing right now. Or, so absolutely give it a try. I have loved, I'd say over the past year and a half, I've tapped more into an artistic side I didn't really know I had. So I was with some girlfriends the other 2 weeks ago, and we just like painted nutcrackers. Like we're just talking and painting. For what reason? I don't know, but it felt good. And so there was something beautiful about being able to talk about something while, having the
creating.
Creating something beautiful. And in some ways, I think it allowed us to open up more with one another because it felt a little bit more safe to do so while we're all working on something that none of us are really like great artists, So art is important. It's fantastic. I think it can open up a side that you might surprise yourself at what it does. And you don't have to show anybody if you don't want to. You don't have to be some artistic genius. Like just you do it because it feels good or because it helps you. It helps you feel. It helps you process.
Yes, and we're trying to really change the narrative because there was a narrative of the artists are for them. They make money for it. You're not superior at it, so don't even go. When if you have a 2-year-old and you turn on the music, they start dancing, right? They start singing, right practically right out the womb. It's our fundamental right to be artists, and I personally believe it's a neurological injustice to not teach a child an art because it's one of the tools that we can use to process life, and definitely for our caregivers, it's one of the tools that they can use. And there was a wonderful documentary called Alive Inside. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yes, where the gentleman was taking around these little iPods and asking those who are living with dementia, hey, what are your favorite songs? Or asking the caregivers, or seeing how old they were and seeing what was in the top 10 hits within their social sphere. And there's this clip that was shown and went viral of this African-American man in his 90s, and they just put the headphones on his head, and he became alive.
Right.
And then, but what got me when I watched the documentary was that clip went viral, and so many people who were caregiving saw this clip, and they had no clue that music could have been a tool to just engage with their loved one, and they just were sharing it, and it just went everywhere. Any thoughts with that on just how we can better share? Because I went on Facebook and I looked into some dementia support groups, and I'm a psychologist. I'm not a psychologist. I have my degree in psychology. But I stopped at the bachelor's. But just just to see the amount of stories people were sharing and how they just needed this space, and that's why I love the Buckeye programs, because they're giving people spaces, every second Tuesday at the senior center in Buckeye. They're giving people space. So anything about that, about the Alive Inside documentary, or just the Facebook groups that people are coming together?
I love what you said. I think it was said beautifully, which is it's a neurological injustice, right? To not be talking about this, to not be sharing about this information. I think that's fantastic. And all these things that we're doing, like, it doesn't, just because somebody is not interacting the way they always have, doesn't mean all of their brain connections aren't working. There's something in there that we might be able to connect with. We can, and again, it goes back to being creative. Maybe we try this, maybe we do this, and not with the goal of, curing them and making them better, right? But with the cure of providing quality of life, with seeing another hopeful interaction, seeing their eyes light up again. It helps us also keep compassion for that person, because sometimes with a lot of burnout and over years, it can feel like, well, they're not going to remember anything. They're not really getting any. It's almost like we can harden ourselves toward that person. But when we see events like that and we see them open up and connect, we're like, oh no, they're still there. They're still there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Sorry, I'm kind of like making lists to make sure because you said something, you said quality of life. And one of the neuroscientists, he's a neurosurgeon over at City of Hope in Southern California, Duarte, Dr. Raul Jandile. Brilliant neuroscientist, neurosurgeon, because he's really academic. Of course, you have to know your stuff to get to that level, but he knows how to talk to people.
Now, that is a rare trait. That is a rare combination.
I love that. He's not too hard to look at either. But check him out. But he said a part of the reason is because before he went to medical school, he was like a security guard. Like, he had these random jobs. But I love that aspect, because it pinpoints the importance of that diverse relationships. Kind of like what you said. If you're going to do something creative, don't do the same thing for the next 10 years. Like, diversify your experiences, the people you're connecting with, things like that. So he just had a diverse experience before he went to medical school, because a lot of people go straight to medical school right out of high school, right? Or right out of college. Right. So that's just a little sidebar, but also to us, right? Diversify our experiences with where we get our information from, who we're connecting with, how people are strategizing with what they're doing. Because like you said, there's not one way for everyone at all times, right? We have to be exposed to different options, which is why I'm so glad we're having our event on November 8th in Buckeye, Arizona. And once again, there's that, the Dementia Care and Resource Forum, November 8th in Buckeye, Arizona. And you can sign up there. But one thing that he said in his talk, one of the podcasts he was on, he said quality of life. And you just said that, quality of life. And he deals with people who have brain cancer, right? They just got the diagnosis. And so they ask him in their questionnaire, well, what's your quality of life? Because he said it's a different route. It's a different line of care, depending on if you're 40 with this diagnosis versus if you're 85. You got 4 young children at home, or, all your kids are grown and you're 97. There's a different conversation we're having here. But he said quality of life. And then he said that people were shocked to hear that. They were like, why am I at this stage of life where I'm getting this diagnosis, and I'm just thinking now about my quality of life? Where was that question when I got my high school diploma, right? Where was that question when I graduated from college or started in the workforce? Why am I just thinking about it right when I get this terminal illness? And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Any thoughts about that?
No, that is incredibly interesting. It makes me think that sometimes we don't realize how valuable and precious life is until we realize it can go much sooner than we would want. Like, we're faced more with our own eventual demise. And so it makes us think about what is really important in life. How do we want to live life? Versus I think a lot, especially again, just in our American culture where it's, you do this, you do this, you do this, you go, go, go. It's a
Yeah.
lot of like, you have these check boxes, and we don't really value or talk a lot about pausing of how do we want life to feel? What makes a great life? I think we get maybe a little stuck on materialistic things,
Mhm.
and we don't really foster this sense of, well, what is really meaningful? What makes life fulfilling for you? What makes life feel good to you? It's probably
Mhm.
not going to be a lot of the things a lot of us are chasing right after high
Yeah.
school through college. And so I think a lot of times we're more likely to pause and reflect on what's truly important to us when we realize all of it can be taken away much sooner than we hope for.
Oh, that's so good. And to have that conversation once again, while I'm doing
Yes.
Brain Ambitious Adventures, to have that conversation earlier
Yeah.
in life. And I can send you when I meet you, I can send you some of the the books that we read, because this book is I Am Creative, preventing dementia or actually lowering the risk. And building brain capital with neurosomatic creativity. So that's, how do we better connect the mind, the brain, the
Yeah.
body?
Yeah.
To be more creative, but using the arts as one of the main mediums. So that's our work. But how do we do this throughout the whole lifespan? But yeah, so just the importance of of standing back and saying, wait, what do I enjoy? We call them glimmers. Have you heard of that term,
I've heard
glimmers?
glimmers. I love that. What is that? It's a word, it's another word,
The
that there's
opposite of triggers. So
triggers.
normally,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah. No, I love that. It's beautiful. I sometimes encourage people like, look for the glimmers. Glimmers are all around, right? So,
mhm,
but we do have to train our brain to see them because our
mhm,
brain naturally is not, our brains are set up to see more of the threats in the environment than
yeah.
they are to see the beauty and wonderful things in the environment. So we kind of have to make that a goal of ours. But I love this whole thing that you're talking about, because what we're with all those things that you're doing, especially with your son, you're building all these like new neural pathways, new neural connections. And as we get older, and as we might have certain conditions and we start to maybe lose some connections, it's
Mhm.
kind of like a highway where, okay, we're going to detour and reroute. And the more of these connections we have, the more we can still get to our end goal, the thing that we want, because we've built up such a rich, diverse, creative life that our brain has had to build all these pathways to go along with it.
Right.
So it's like we call it cognitive reserve in psychology. So you're building
Yeah.
up a lot of cognitive reserve. Oh my gosh, what's his name?
This is him, Sean. And he actually, I was looking for the other photo, but he actually just did a mini keynote at the United Nations General Assembly event at the Brain Days in New York last month, because they were talking about the brain and mental health for the youth on that day. So they had him come up and talk about the 7 pillars of building a healthy brain and everything. And so yeah, I just want to see a bigger conversation of how do we support everyone at every stage of
Yeah.
life and in every situation, but knowing that it's all connected. I was
Yes.
once a child,
Yeah.
and hopefully, God willing, I'll be an older adult, in my elderly years. Oops, there you go. Sorry. I took you off. I wanted to take him off.
Now, how
Um,
amazing is that? Because, it's fun. He looks like he's having a blast and he's proud. He's learning the skills of talking to an audience, no less. Do you know how, I mean, I didn't have that skill until, probably graduate school, where it was like forced upon me, right? So I think it's so lovely, and just a beautiful example of like, we don't have to be following any other's path, how it looks for other people. We can, tap into the creativity, help them decide what feels good, and put them in new, unique situations. And we're growing brain connections while we're doing all of that.
Yeah, and we don't have to. Yeah, we don't have to wait, and that's my thing.
Yeah.
There he is at the United Nations.
Oh, that's lovely.
We don't have to wait until they're older to, like, so what does that look like? It's wonderful. I keep removing you. I did want to bring this up. So I'm all about research. It seems like you
Mhm,
are as well. And we
mhm.
talk about cognitive reserve too. We want the kids to know these words.
Yeah.
Like, just because they're 6 doesn't mean they can't say the word cognitive reserve. If they can say Tyrannosaurus Rex, they can say cerebellum, okay?
Right. Yes, I agree.
They should know when I'm working out, when I'm balancing, I'm helping out my cerebellum, right? And things like
Yes.
that. Like, let's empower them with the experiences, but also with the vocab.
Mhm.
So this is the U.S. Pointer study. Have you seen this out yet?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, great. Did you want to talk about it? Just
No,
so
I mean, it
audience
it
know about it.
yeah, I mean, it's great. What I love about what they're doing here is they're really trying to make things kind of easy to digest and not so overwhelming for people on, hey, we have a lot of things we can do to help benefit us, right? So we have there are things in our control. I think a lot of times it feels like when people were talking about getting older or getting dementia, it feels like so much is outside of our control, but it's like, hey, here are things, 4 easy areas we could focus on to like overall help our brains. And we don't have to be perfect in all of the areas, but we can maybe just like choose one, right? So, things we've already been talking about in terms of physical exercise, cognitive exercise, anything that's going to work the brain, nutrition. One thing that we didn't mention maybe so much, but I think is great, is just this health monitoring piece, right? Staying like getting feedback from, like getting standardized, objective feedback on how we're doing, where we are, what's our baseline, what are our checkpoints along the way. I think that's helpful too, because we can catch things earlier. It's always easier to catch things earlier and intervene earlier.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so my brain's always like, okay, well, how do I work that in? And so I would even think that would be like relationships. Like, what's your relationship with you? Right. The Center for Brain Health. We actually flew out there in March because March is a big brain health month. And we read our brain book, My Brain, My Beautiful Brain, where
I love it.
Sean just goes through his life, just showing people how to have fun with your brain. But what they talk about over at the Center for Brain Health in Dallas, Texas, which they seem to be the national leaders with this brain health revolution and brain capital. Well, that's mostly from Dr. Harris. But what they are saying is, it's not really a comparison again with you and other people. It's a comparison with you against you. Where were you? And I was born in 79, so I'm 46. Yes, 46. And so I'm, that midlife. So I want you to talk about midlife brain and what, especially women. And I don't even know if you have a background in like the whole menopause conversation, but that's a whole other podcast itself, right?
Yeah.
But they're talking about, compare you against you. And so even for me, I was like, should I get my cognitive testing done in my 40s? I do know my sugar for some reason is high. And that's another thing is a lot of people are living with like pre-diabetes and they don't even know it. Or they living with these issues that are pre-dementia risk factors and they don't even know it. Anything to say about the midlife brain and living with these risk factors?
Yeah, no, it's me and my girlfriends have been talking about this a lot. And just, I have a friend who's recently, got news that, she has pre-diabetes and what are we going to do? And, all the things, the steps that she can take. But you mentioned about getting testing, that's not like a standard thing to get testing ahead of time, right? You said, get a baseline of where you're functioning, because when we test for dementia and we're doing like the cognitive testing, the paper pencil testing, we are comparing how people are doing to normative data. Like, we're looking at other people of similar age, similar education, hopefully similar race too, right? Just to see like, what is normal? What would we consider normal? But we don't have the greatest norms. There's lots of problems with that. And so when we're thinking about, okay, so by the time most people go get their testing, first of all, it's a lot late, they're already well into the stages, but we're having to make an educated guess on where we think they were before. So we're all, because dementia is a condition, when whatever type it is, it has to be a decline from a previous level of functioning. So it is like an educated guess. Do we think this person was above this area that they are performing in now? So this concept of like, do I get testing now, like you said, to determine where I'm at, might not be a bad idea, but I think it's also incredibly expensive. And a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford that. And I'm not aware of insurance companies willing to just do we don't focus a lot on prevention, honestly. Like, we don't, and it's going to take a lot of ourselves making steps, maybe out of pocket costs, to do a lot of these things. And I think that excludes a lot of people who don't have that extra income to do. So that's a whole nother conversation. We do know women are at higher risk for dementia, maybe for different reasons, estrogen levels, they live longer, all these other things. That's not really my area of expertise so much. But what I do want to say is a phrase that like is my jam and what I love talking about. You said relationship with you. As a clinical psychologist, as my background, we often talk about relationships with other people, but our brains can be bullies to ourselves if we're not careful about it. The things that we're telling ourselves, how we're going through our day, I should be better now. I should know how to deal with this situation. Life is horrible. All of these things we're saying to ourselves, those have a health impact on us as well. So I think just like we want to help the people we love, you want to help your son, all these other people, we need to do more education and help on what's our relationship with ourselves. How do we want to treat ourselves when we're in one of the hardest chapters in our life, whether that's caregiving or whether we're entering a new chapter, like we're both in midlife now. Like, what does that mean? Things are changing, things we can see are changing and things we can't see are changing. And a lot of the things we can't see require us to make not so fun appointments and sometimes spend money out of pocket to figure it out. And I think there's a whole conversation there about how that leaves out a lot of people.
Yeah, that's so good, because just the awareness, kind of like what you said, without the awareness of prevention and just the talking about it. And so that's why I'm so glad that you're with us. So, it is at the top of the hour. Oh my goodness, I can talk to you for like four more hours.
I know. I'm glad to meet you in person though, coming up soon.
Yes. And so you did mention the process versus or the process of the genetic testing and everything. So, but and how like they draw out things, or they draw out things. So we're looking at the outcome, but I know there's research on looking at like the process. And lastly, before we leave, he posts some amazing things on LinkedIn. So I know if anyone wanted to look at some of his work, I have him on my podcast as well. I don't know what episode it is, very recent, but he kind of uses tech to kind of do what you're doing it as well.
That's awesome.
Definitely another one. So if people wanted to find out more about you, where should they go?
You can go to careblazers.com. Our website's there. We have a bunch of free resources, including weekly YouTube training videos just on dementia caregiving, how to make it a bit easier, lighter, understanding the disease process. From there, you can also sign up for a free weekly newsletter called the Dementia Dose. We send out an email every week with some resources and helpful tips there.
Awesome. And so just to remind people that we do have the Dementia Care Resource Forum, November 8th. Come see her in person doing the amazing things that she is doing. This is in Buckeye, Arizona. You can sign up here, take a screenshot of that, or you can just email the Dementia Friendly Buckeye Committee team. Jamie and her team are doing amazing work. And so we're just so excited for that. And thank you again for just being here, spending your time, and yeah, thank you for being on the Create and Grow Your Brain podcast. We'll see you.
Thank you, Janine. It was nice to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.